What happens when one of history's greatest philosophers tutors one of its greatest conquerors? Around 343 BCE, Philip II summoned Aristotle of Stagira to Macedon to educate his son, Alexander. Around 343 BCE, when Alexander was 13 years old, Philip II invited the renowned philosopher to Macedon to become the tutor of his son and a select group of other noble Macedonian youths. A student of Plato for nearly 2 decades at the Academy in Athens, he had since embarked on his own philosophical and scientific inquiries. His father, Nicomachus, had been a physician to King Amyntas III, Alexander's grandfather, so there was a pre-existing connection between Aristotle's family and the Macedonian royal court. Politics and ethics would have been central. Aristotle believed deeply in the polis, the Greek city-state, as the ideal form of political organization, and he would have discussed different forms of government, monarchy, aristocracy, democracy, and their corruptions. He emphasized the importance of virtue, moderation the golden mean, and justice in a ruler. His work Politics and Nicomachean Ethics, though written later, likely reflect the kind of principles he imparted. Aristotle, like many Greeks of his time, generally held a view of Greek superiority over non-Greeks, whom he sometimes characterized as being slaves by nature and fit to be ruled. They were very different personalities. Aristotle, the measured, analytical intellectual. Alexander, the passionate, action-oriented youth. Yet, a bond of mutual respect, and perhaps even affection, seems to have developed. Alexander clearly valued learning and held Aristotle in high regard, at least for a time. The philosopher who sought to understand and categorize the world helped shape the mind of the young man who would go on to conquer much of it, spreading Greek language and culture in a way that neither of them could have fully foreseen, creating a new Hellenistic era that would, in many ways, be a testament to the lessons learned in those tranquil groves. Later in life, their relationship reportedly cooled, particularly after the execution of Callisthenes, Aristotle's nephew, who had criticized Alexander's adoption of Persian customs. He is said to have advised Alexander to treat Greeks as a leader and hegemon, but non-Greeks as a master. However, Alexander's later policies of fusion and his apparent respect for and adoption of some Persian customs seem to diverge from this strict interpretation, suggesting either that Aristotle's influence in this specific area was limited or that Alexander's own experiences led him to a more pragmatic and perhaps even more expansive vision. He would have stressed the ruler's responsibility to his subjects and the importance of good laws. Philip, in a gesture of goodwill and perhaps to entice the philosopher, rebuilt Aristotle's hometown of Stagira, which Philip himself had previously destroyed in his northern campaigns. Alexander had his first taste of real command, suppressing a Thracian revolt and founding his first city, Alexandropolis. It equipped him with a sharp intellect, an appreciation for Greek culture and its ideals, a framework for ethical and political thought, and a curiosity about the world. While Alexander was too much his own man to be a mere disciple, Aristotle's tutelage undoubtedly refined his mind, broadened his horizons, and provided him with intellectual tools that complemented his innate genius for leadership and warfare. He learned not just what to think, but how to think critically, analytically, and strategically. His formal schooling was over, but the intellectual foundations laid by Aristotle would endure. Aristotle famously prepared an annotated edition of Homer's Iliad for Alexander. Aristotle, himself a master of logic and argument, would have trained Alexander in public speaking, critical for addressing assemblies, motivating troops, and conducting diplomacy. Known as the casket copy because Alexander later kept it in a precious casket taken from Darius's treasures, reportedly sleeping with it and a dagger under his pillow. The Iliad, with its themes of heroism, glory kleos, honor, and the complexities of leadership, resonated deeply with Alexander, especially the figure of Achilles, whom he already idolized through his mother's influence. Aristotle's guidance would have helped Alexander analyze the characters, motivations, and leadership lessons within Homer's epic. Greek tragedies by Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides, exploring profound human and ethical dilemmas, were also likely part of the curriculum. This was a deliberate and significant choice by Philip, who, despite his own pragmatic and martial nature, respected Greek learning and wished to provide his heir with the finest education possible. For 3 years, in the tranquil Nymphaeum at Mysa, the master thinker shaped the mind of the future world shaker, imparting knowledge that would profoundly influence his reign. His empirical approach to knowledge, based on observation and classification, was revolutionary. This scientific curiosity seems to have taken root in Alexander, who later, during his campaigns in Asia, famously sent biological specimens back to Aristotle, supporting his teacher's research. He also took scientists and surveyors on his expedition. While the taming of Bucephalus showcased Alexander's innate courage and insight, his formal education was entrusted to one of the most formidable intellects of the ancient world, Aristotle. Aristotle, then around 41 years old, was already a figure of immense intellectual stature. The school was established not in the bustling, politically charged atmosphere of Pella, but in a more secluded and idyllic setting. The Nymphaeum, or Temple of the Nymphs, at Mysa. This was a rural retreat, likely near modern Noosa, with groves, shady walkways, and stone seats conducive to contemplation and learning. Here, for approximately 3 years, from roughly 343 to 340 BCE, Alexander and his companions, who included future generals and friends like Hephaestion, Ptolemy, Cassander, and Craterus, received instruction from the master. Aristotle's curriculum for the young prince was likely broad and tailored to the needs of a future ruler. Literature, particularly Greek epic poetry, formed another cornerstone. Rhetoric, the art of persuasive speaking, was essential for any Greek leader. Beyond the humanities, Aristotle, a keen observer of the natural world, would have introduced Alexander to the sciences, biology, zoology, botany, and perhaps even medicine. The question of Aristotle's influence on Alexander's later pan-Hellenic mission against Persia and his views on barbarians is complex. The personal relationship between the philosopher and the prince is a subject of much speculation. The tutelage formally ended around 340 BCE when Alexander, at the age of 16, was appointed regent of Macedon while Philip campaigned against Byzantium and Perinthus. The impact of Aristotle's teaching on Alexander was profound, though not always in predictable ways. The image of Aristotle teaching Alexander at Mysa remains a potent symbol of the fusion of intellectual power and worldly ambition. See you soon with our next episode on the Battle of Chaeronea 338 BCE. Until then, take care of yourself and surroundings around you and make it a great day. Stay blessed always.